Everybody. I'll now hand over to staff. So Peter and Bede, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship, and Atamarie councillors and Your Worship. So yesterday we set the scene with some of the background in terms of the alignment between the resident survey and the levels of service and performance measures, the thematic analysis. Today what we've got for you is the staff advice to provide that information back arising from the consultation. And so we have endeavoured to structure it by topic through either as it arose in the consultation document or other matters organically as they arose. And we're going to have a number of team members here to answer questions and work through with you. So with that, I'll hand over to those brief comments. I'll hand over to Peter and ask him to give a little more detail, and then if you wish, Your Worship, we will commence with it, starting with the first one.
If we don't get started, we'll never get finished. Now,
that's exactly right.
One thing that we need to make abundantly clear is that staff need a steer on where we're going. We don't want to leave stuff open-ended, if possible. And everyone's got the right to put an amendment in, and then we can debate it and all sorts of things. But if we're all in agreement on some things, let's give staff the advice that we want, and so they can go ahead and bake stuff in properly and make life easier for everybody. Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, everybody. Look, the staff advice here and the options provided are primarily drawn from the questions in the consultation document, but also from key themes emerging from the submissions and sometimes from council itself. We are looking for guidance. We'll have staff support in the room if there are technical questions beyond what Bede and I can respond to. They're on standby and will be with us in support. So without further ado, I might move to bid funding for major events, major and business events. And we'll have the illustrious John Filsell over here on standby to answer any technical issues. The recommendation there is no change to the draft LTP, that the funding be left at proposed levels. The context and feedback from submitters is there, and in terms of the breakdown. Obviously there's a very high level of support for leaving the bid funding as proposed. I'm not probably going to line by line every option that we're going through here. I know that you can see them. They're in summary form. Mr. Mayor, I think that beyond introducing the topics, it really becomes a matter of councillor discussion and debate. I can go through the detail if you wish, but it seems unwieldy to me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Yanni, please.
So one thing that's kind of became apparent to me with a number of the submitters around Christchurch and Z, and with the film in particular, is the Canterbury-wide benefit. So I'm just wondering, like, you know, I still don't quite understand why we as a city are paying for everything that benefits the region when we've got other structures in place that should be able to provide some support. If you take climate change, for example, we're funding the Merrill Forum to give out grants across Canterbury for climate change, yet when we do stuff that has a wider benefit, we don't seem to get grants from those groups. Is there a way that we can set an expectation of regional funding for some of these things, and what's the best way to pursue that?
I suspect John may be best placed to respond to that. I'm not aware of any legal mechanism by which we could do it. I think that's been canvassed before, hasn't it, with council?
Well, if you take the climate change one, we just go to the Merrill Forum and we say you contribute X, Y, Z, and then every council votes on it and you know, endorses the film strategy or whatever it is, and then they all buy into it.
John, do you have any observations on that?
Sorry, Yanni, is this about bid funding that you're talking about? Sorry,
so there's a number of things that we bid on that have a benefit for Canterbury, right?
For the events ecosystem.
And the events ecosystem, right? So it seems inherently unfair that we are funding all the venues and then also funding all the operational costs towards the bids.
Yeah, but you check. It's either the events events ecosystem funding or it isn't. The system is already there, so it's either we fund them and let them do. Andrew,
So is this a specific question? Are you seeking a response from staff about funding other than Christchurch City Council for the events that are held within Christchurch?
Yeah, that benefit.
Nigel, are you
a
able
wider
to
area.
provide any sort of response at this point?
I mean, we can certainly take it on board to go and pursue how we could get funding from other councils and other bodies to support events that are delivered in Christchurch. But previously, it's been difficult to receive funding from other sources for events that are held in Christchurch. I think through the mayor in terms of the questions around how do we get funding from other TLAs or agencies to support stuff that has a wider benefit from Christchurch, and that's a different discussion, and that's not necessarily around the event ecosystem bid funding, I think.
At a practical level, I can't be 100% certain of this, but I'm not aware of any of our surrounding TLAs having set aside money for this in their draft LTPs. So for them to add money at this point in the process seems possibly unlikely.
On any of those regional structures, those that or Greater Christchurch Partnership, for example, you would hope that these are the things that we had a South Island destination management plan. We've got a Greater Christchurch some sort of destination plan. So spaces
Andrew,
and places
please.
plan. So
you're getting off topic, Andrew.
that's okay.
The thing for councillors to be mindful of is, I guess, and Christchurch NZ have been quite clear about this, the benefits of these events come when we have additional bed nights and additional spend, and that is typically within the city centre. That's how the benefits flow to the residents of Christchurch as opposed to Selwyn. In fact, most likely you will get visitors from other adjacent TLAs attending those events. So that's how I would suggest that this needs to be considered.
Okay, right. So before we go any further, we're trying to get some agreement, if we can, so I can get them all put in the mayor's recommendations. So when we get to D-Day, we can say, right, we've put these ones to bed. Everyone's had their discussion, everything else. One of the things I'm suggesting here for the events ecosystem, that we change it round. So in FY25, we put in 1.5 million, FY26, 2.5 million, and FY27, 4.5 million. So that gives money to this group, maybe not as fast as they wanted it for at the start, but as we all know, we've got this blimp that we've got to get ourselves over, and I've talked to the Deputy Mayor. She's happy with this, but I'm just throwing that idea out there for everyone to digest.
Yes, I am. You're right, Phil.
Yeah. Oh, you are there. Good on you. Okay, so that's something that we came up with yesterday. I unfortunately had the older piece of paper in front of me and I couldn't actually see what we'd decided. So with that, I will then ask Andre to carry on talking because he had his hand up.
Cool, thank you. Just point I made is we asked the public if they support increasing events funding. What we didn't ask the public is do they support cutting events funding, which is essentially what we're doing with this long-term plan. So it's a cut on previous years. So the question, therefore, realistically should be, would you support our city having less events for the next 3 years, as we did the last 3 years? Because that's what this all means. Whereas anyone reading it would think we're actually talking about having more over the next 3 years, as opposed to less. A lot of the submissions that came back also talked about they don't necessarily support funding for the bidding for a major events, but they value the community events, want to see more of that. But what the public won't necessarily be aware of is that if we go forward with this as proposed, it actually eats into that local community funding because the events and festival funding is already heavily oversubscribed, and it would mean that things like the Sands Parade, Christmas in the Park, that kind of thing, we have a very, very limited pot of funding available to them. So I don't feel like what we've asked can possibly, or what we've got here doesn't capture actually what people have told us. And we've framed the question in a way that doesn't actually, truthfully, give people a thought on whether they want less events or more for the next 3 years. The consultation document also made no mention of Te Kaha for the first year, that there'd be no funding for bid for major events the first year of Te Kaha, which I put forward in a member as ruled out of order But what the Mayor is suggesting now makes a fair bit of sense to
What
put
is the
forward as a
step? It's just-
recommendation.
Yeah,
I'd put-
it's to put in the mayor's rec, so we need to discuss it, see if
Yeah.
everyone's happy, because we've got to find a way forward, otherwise we're still sitting here in December and getting nowhere bloody fast.
Yeah, and I don't think we'd like asking other councils, but what you suggestion makes sense. I'd possibly, still look to an amendment of some description, but yeah, makes sense where you're going with that. There's a bit less the first year, more the following years.
Okay, so we've got to start somewhere. Okay, and just to be mindful that further down in today's stuff, if we get that far, is the Santa Parade funding as a separate item. So just to let you know that.
Well, and this is the thing, is there'll be a number of things that may be worthy of being a separate item, but we've got an events and festivals fund that's been oversubscribed for a number of years by up to 400, 500%, and it's a fund that's been frozen for 5 years as well. We could start picking ones to individually fund, but
But it's not up to us to decide. It's up to the team who is Nigel in the events ecosystem. That's their department. They know the best. We might have a wee pet thing. We want the Chrysanthemum Growers Guild to come along, but we've got to be let them know, let them have the license to do what they want to do.
yeah, well, agreed. But if the fund is oversubscribed by 500% already, we've got an obvious issue here that some are going to have to get the chop unless we adjust the
that's
funding.
their
Yeah.
department.
So that's the point I'm making.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thanks. Actually, one of my questions was, could we have an option that was a change in the amount of money, not just the timing? So that's great that you and Pauline have come up with that.
We
I
just
think
got
it's
to
a
get
nicer. I think it's a better compromised way to do an alternate option, which is good. The other one was just that with the nearby TAs and the point that Yanni was making, just wonder whether discussion on the contribution towards the Takaha OPEX that we're having with the neighbouring TAs currently would potentially include some of that. That's all. Yeah.
Okay, Doug. Victoria.
Thank you. Can I just get some clarity on your recommendation? So the additional funding of 1.5 in FY25, is that 1.5 as a standalone, or is that on top of something else, or is that it?
That's a very good question.
It's on top of what's already in the LTP.
Yeah, but what's already in the LTP on bid
I
funding
need
is
to get
zero.
some advice on that.
Councillor, it would be on top of what's in the draft LTP. So we consulted on an option to include approximately, and forgive me, I can't remember the exact number, about 2.8 million in year one, for example. The Mayor's proposing, instead of putting 2.8, that we propose to put in 1.5 million in year one. So it's additional funding to what's in the LTP. Year two, was it? My fault.
And my question is, where's the recommendation come from? And I think it would be helpful for councillors to know what Sport and Rec's views are on this. And can we hear that, please?
Well, Nigel's the head of Sport and Rec, but I'm not sure where that recommendation came from. I prepared these recommendations, the alternative.
So my question is
That's right. It's just Pauline and I had a wee.
Yeah, I'm unaware of this new recommendation.
So what I'm really struggling with is trying to understand what you want to achieve today. Because if it's, do we need more information in order to make a decision, then what is that information? Or are we meant to debate, or are people debating today? Or are we just saying this is contentious and we're going to need to debate it? I'm just not quite sure on what you're trying to achieve.
What I'm trying to do here is there's a list of what I would like as Mayor's recommendations, if we could get some agreement, so that when we come down to crunch time at the finish, because there's going to be lots of things that we will want to debate on, there will be a lot of amendments coming and going and stuff like that, but if we can put to bed a number of these now, it just makes life easier at the end. Is that probably right, Pete?
It's what goes into the final report that comes to council that we need debate. We need debate. Yeah, so it's a what do we put into the report for debate.
Microphone, Sarah.
So you could hypothetically say if Phil gets to bring along Mayor's recommendations, which get debated and can be amended if people put up. So say if Phil goes, general feel is everyone's happy with the compromise position of 1.5, But if you went actually, well, you probably can't with Christchurch NZ, but
It's to put a line in the sand. Otherwise, we'll have a lot of these ones. We'll go, and as I say, we'll be here for the rest of our life.
it's almost like you get, say if the general feedback is a majority go, actually it should be 2.8 million and not 1.5, then it's like Phil will go, well, is it easier just to incorporate the 2.8 into his recommendations to start with?
Take the likes of one of the ones that are in here that we'll quietly get down to is Yoldhurst Memorial Hall. I think 110% of everyone that's here is more than happy that happens. So that goes into Mayor's Rex, so that when the time comes, we don't individually do it then. We sort of get across the line with a whole lot of smaller things now. And this was
So I think we can all agree that this one isn't quite as easy as Yoldhurst Memorial Hall.
Of course, yes. A starting point.
It's a starting point for the debate at the end. So we started this kind of, I guess, with Leanne, where so mayors do it differently around the country. So you'll see Mayor Brown in Auckland has a very strong position, like these are my recommendations, even if councillors don't necessarily all agree with them to start with, and then we'll go through and debate them. Under Leanne, we did more of a, like this kind of process, we all kind of have a general sense of what might go into the final document for the mayor's recommendations even. And that doesn't preclude Phil ending up saying, well, actually, this is something I want to formally debate at the end and putting it in.
Yeah, we did it during the annual plan last year, and it actually worked very well. There was a whole lot of sort of, I shouldn't say rats and mice because this is an important one, but there was a lot of ones that we all were feeling the same way, and they just went through, and we didn't have to debate them all on the day.
Can people use their microphone, please?
Oh, sorry, Pauline. So if people aren't entirely comfortable with the mayor's recommendation, then they need to speak up about that now.
Yeah, we're trying to flag which compromises aren't going to fly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. And then you still get to debate it in June.
Oh, you still? Yeah, this is not. This is
Sure.
Yeah.
And because I'm on the board, am I conflicted from any of the conversation going forward today?
Not conversation, but you shouldn't be giving directional voting would be my pick.
Okay.
There's no voting.
Can I ask questions? Thanks. Yeah. Thank you.
Celeste.
In terms of the additional funding for the major bids, does that, because one of the aspects of that was the City Identity Fund, which covered off some of the smaller events. I'm just not sure what we get with the extra funding. Like, do we know what that would cover? So the extra 1.5? Because if we were to put the extra 1.5 towards one big event, I would be less comfortable than we're actually getting a whole range of events that communities have said these are a priority. If we're going to cut some funding, we'd prefer it to go to those events that don't have a cost.
To Nigel's fund.
It's Nigel's department, and he would know. Oh, we can't blow it all on one. We've got that's what they're good at and been doing for the last number of years, haven't you, Nigel?
So my question would be then, will we get visibility of that? If we're kind of saying yes, what do we get? Because my yes is conditional on what the yes covers, and I'd want that information before I gave a thumbs up.
I think we've got to be very careful that if we give it, as I say, 1.5, 2.5 or 4.5, it doesn't matter which year you're in, we've got to have the trust in the group, which is us, VO and Christchurch NZ, that's the ones that are the three that are in it, to work it out amongst themselves and do it properly. We don't want to be telling them what to do,
I guess
apart from giving them money.
The feedback that I've come across is that people are less comfortable with that funding going to the larger events, and we've seen things like SailGP come in as extra events. So I wouldn't want to make sure that we're just paying for extra events rather than things that because we might find that things are still getting cut. So things like funding towards Centre Parade, I recognise that is potentially going to be handled differently, but that's a good example of what people don't want to lose. So I trust Nigel, but I would want that information before I made a decision.
Is that you're wanting Nigel to hold the funding and then for Christchurch and the VO or the community events?
Would be that if the priority, for instance, if council preferred the funding to go into city identity funding, which captures all of those sort of lower tier events that would otherwise go into the oversubscribed fund, do we just need to set up an additional fund to capture those slightly larger events that we we're capturing currently within the big pot, if that makes sense.
Nigel.
May I suggest, if that's the recommendation of the Mayor, then staff can go away, do the work with VO and Christchurch and come back and have that information before you make the final decision.
I'd be comfortable with that.
Okay, but we do, but what worries me, we do run the risk that one of us, two of us might say, oh, we need to do this, and these guys know the broad range of everyone that's applying. There's a lot of people, the little bit I know about Christchurch NZ, there's a lot of people that come and say, can you help us with this, can you help us with that? Not everyone can get help. Someone will dip out. So I understand what you're saying. Timothy.
Yeah, I know the comment with regards to 5 times applications for the money, but we also got to trust our staff and those of VO and those of CNZ with the quality of event. Just because they're applying for it doesn't mean that they're deserving of it. And I do think, and it's been mentioned, that we've got to look at our fees with regards to Hagley Park and those prime spots, because we have tried to encourage events away from Hagley Park to lift the vision of some wonderful areas the city has to spread the quality out, but obviously everybody does want to use Hagley Park for a reason. I guess one question I did have, and I would like, and it really affects a bigger picture. Some time ago, the Lantern Fest was closed, which was shifted from the council events team to CNZ. The funding went across, and the Lantern Festival was stopped, whether it was COVID or what, I can't quite remember, and yet the funding stayed there and didn't come back to council. So I would like the answer to that, please, because I just, that is not a level playing field, and I just want to know, there are a few things here, because apart from the 3 big ones we have, which is our events team, VO and CNZ, there is a huge amount of funding for events, and I think that some of them we do need to review, whether it's a historic funding of multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars and it's just done every year to tick the box, but we do need to review, because things are getting harder, and we do, rather than just, oh, you're going to increase it, I want to look at the mechanics behind it, and I think that's the crucial thing, because just because you do a lot of events doesn't mean it's going to add value to your city, because you can do a whole lot of crap things, and that's actually a detractor to those companies, individuals and groups that really deliver and work really hard to do value.
So Nigel can come back with his information with that.
I was going to say we should just circulate the criteria what we consulted on.
Okay.
Yeah.
That will clarify.
Yep. Victoria had another question.
Yeah, I just wanted some clarity around what was already there. So reading the document that we've got, it says that the last 3 years funding provided by council above the baseline funding was 600 per annum, funded from the Capital Endowment Fund. So is your recommendation 1.5 OPEX and 25 on top of the 600 from the Capital Endowment Fund, and then the next year 2.5 million and 26 on top of the 600 from the Capital Endowment Fund? Can I get clarity on that?
And then 4.5 the year after.
Yeah.
On top of.
Am I correct on that?
I think I am, Boyd. Is it on top of the 600? Sorry.
I'd like clarity on that, thanks.
We'll bring the answer back.
Yeah, we will bring the answer back, but I'm reasonably confident that it is.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. So, what do we do now, Pete? If we need a decision, what are we doing? We're just waiting for Nigel to come back and tell us.
You should receive that before we decide which way it's going.
Okay, but Pauline and I are just looking at a way forward, and this is a line in the sand if anyone thinks it should be slightly different, but we're now going to get the information to say, it's not just the 1.5, it's 1.5 plus what's already there, so that information will come back to us, and it may well get into the Mayor's Rec that way. Okay?
Understood.
Shall we do the next one?
Mr. Mayor, Phil?
Sorry, mate, far away, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to reiterate Tim's point and the impacts of what happened with the Lantern Festival, and there are going to be other festivals that are associated with that too. I'm just keen to get staff's recs on those big events and what the implications are on that, because there may be a potential that we need to up that other fund in order to follow that Mayor's recommendation. I'm pretty keen to follow your rep and yours and Pauline through and see where that comes.
Okay, thank you very much. Good. Mel.
Can we get a definition of a major event again? Because I kind of forgotten what it is, and I don't know if the Lantern Festival even meets that criteria. So it'd be, can we just get that again? Because we're talking about, it's definitely not community funding or anything like this money. So yeah, can we just get this clarified?
Because what I'm gonna say something that I'll probably end up regretting. The way I see it is that Christchurch NZ used to get a lot of money to do things with. Then it decided that we'd start up this events ecosystem, and they left a whole lot of things behind that they would have normally funded, and they went away and did the sexy things. Okay, so we had to start up this team to do these things. I'll say I shouldn't say it, smaller things, and we had to fund it. Whereas in the past, Christchurch NZ were funding the lot. Not correct? That's the way I see it.
We had a difference between, so CNZ do the major events, and there's a major event strategy that council signed off from CNZ, and council do the community events, and there's always been a clear delineation between that, and so Centre Parade's always fallen with council, not CNZ, so there has been a differentiation. Yeah,
because at one
two
stage,
different strategies.
At one stage they were doing them all, and then they sort of went away and did the bigger ones and left the void that we had to fill. I might be totally wrong in saying
There
that.
was a strategy signed off by council on it.
Probably.
But I, from the submissions, I didn't take that the submitters were actually as clear about that delineation as we are. They just wanted events, and I think picking up on Councillor Donovan's thing, they wanted events from small events to big events, right through the raft. So
And
the
that's where
submissions reflected the whole gamut.
Nigel, did you? You were pointing at Nigel? No? He didn't want to say anything. You'll get back to us on what we were talking about. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. Thank you.
Accelerating adaptation. Again, the staff advice is no change from the draft LTP. By context, we ask whether we should bring forward the additional 1.8 million. The findings there are, I believe, reasonably clear.
Yeah, so one of the things that pardon, Sarah, what was that?
Yeah, no, the recommendation is to bring it forward by 1 year, not by 2. It's a compromise kind of recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah.
1 year. And just to point out that it's in accordance with the government's new adaptation law, which is due in early 2025. So that's why we're just doing it by 1, not 2. Is that right? Okay. Sarah's comfortable. So is everyone generally, yeah, Sarah?
The only thing I want to check, and I'll put it through as a question, is just to make sure, because I know that some of that funding was potentially going to be used for stuff that wasn't necessarily the actual coastal panel work. It was the sort of pre-planning risk identification kind of stuff, which we should be doing anyway. So it might be that there's a small amount needed in that first year to continue with that, especially if we're looking at more than just coastal hazards and climate hazards. Yeah.
Okay.
So climate rather than just coastal.
So
through you, Mr. Bear, that funding is in there separately.
Who's saying that? Oh, there is?
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. So Pete, we've got some direction.
Very nice. Thank you.
We're only 50%. So righto. So
we just keep doing that.
Carry on rewardless. Okay. The next one, please.
Climate Resilience Fund. If we could have that on screen, please, it might.
What I'm suggesting there, it's subject to the agreed terms in the 2025 that outline how the fund is directed to support adaptation for coastal and fire hazards, and with no drawdown in the first 3 years. As a suggestion. So is anyone?
Sorry, I haven't quite read the recommendation there, but yeah, I think that whatever we do has to be subject to having the terms of reference in place, which makes complete sense, and I think that should include things like no drawdown for a decent period of time, so it does build up, which is great. And I mean, the thing is, if we don't have those in place, then council just makes a different decision next annual plan before we start actually drawing it down. So that's yeah. But I think
All
that's
right.
good.
So we're all generally
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think if it specifies not for at least 3 years, I think that's probably a bit far because that'll be including potentially not because you don't want to predetermine the sign off of the terms of reference, but it's an including maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Timothy?
Yeah, I do think, and it's not a funding issue, but it's just a process issue. I just think that at some point we do need to define, are we going to put all these together? Because climate resilience and accelerating adaptation, all these things are pointing to the same thing. And to have different slots, it seems, it's wasting time and money. So I think that now that we're recognising, we're fully recognised and the threat that's coming and the change that's coming, we do have to have one big team looking at it, or one effective team looking at the different groups looking at different areas. I know that they're specialist areas, but it does need to be under one umbrella, and I think it's wasting time. Just different pockets. We need to put it under one umbrella and have a focus going forward.
The staff advice on your document is different to the staff advice on the slides. So I'm agreeing with the staff advice that was on the slide. So the slide says implement the Climate Resilience Fund from 25-26. That gives us a year to get the terms in place. The document, the draft, says from financial year 26.
That might be me trying to do shorthand. When I say 26, it's year 25, 26. So 24,
Okay,
25.
because you've said FY, which is the one we...
FY
So FY 25 is year 1, FY 26 is year 2.
So we clarify that it is in a year's time.
Yeah, years
Yes.
2. Yep.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Spot on. Thank you very much. Wow, we're motoring along here, Pete.
Mr. Mayor, I'm just going to suggest that maybe process-wise, for clarity, we could throw the staff advice slide up, give everyone a chance to see it, and then move to the Mayor's rec slide to see the further advice.
Yeah, fair comment. Yep.
And that way everybody's across everything
Otherwise,
at the same
we're all
time.
boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. Sam and Kathy have got the Mayor's recs, so I just don't know technically whether...
Do we need just a couple of minutes for them to get that?
Do you need a little time to figure out how to toggle between the two? Okay.
Printing them out. Yeah, so we can have the staff's recs on the screen the whole time, and then people can see the mayor's.
Yeah.
recs.
So shall we just take a couple of minutes
Yeah.
to just print them as off, and everyone's got one, otherwise we're flying blind.
Melanie,
Flying
doesn't
blind.
anyone like you?